hello, and welcome once more to Emerald Heart Radio. I'm Alan Cox, and welcome. It's a Friday, comes around that quickly, and I'm glad the signature tune has been changed, because I almost fell asleep with the other one every week, and I had to keep my eyes open, but that one certainly cheers you up. Anyway, me rabbiting on, I'd like to say hi to the main man, Mr. David Ashworth. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Alan. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, we've had to nail Dave's feet to the floor to change that tune, haven't we?
I've been quite serious with the other ones. Don't get me wrong; it's a really nice song, really, tune, really good. But it kind of sent me off into some kind of almost trance, and I just have to shake my head, ready to speak. So.
Well, I think Dave was on some payola with playing that tune. Do you remember the payola? When was that? Was that the late 60s, when all the DJs
right.
got caught out for pocketing money for playing records?
That's right. Dave's probably saying, if only.
Yeah. What's the title of that tune, Dave? I can't remember. Oh, he's gone off for a brew. Look, he's put us on the air and he's cleared off.
That's about the bottom of it. Hang on a minute. I think he's probably sending a message here. My silver lining, he says. Oh, thank you, Dave.
My silver lining, yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I heard that tune.
By First Aid. Now, I don't know whether that's true.
It is, actually, yeah.
Oh, okay, right, okay. By First Aid, right.
Yeah, I heard that tune on the radio some weeks ago. And it had, it was just so uplifting, the whole energy of it. And as I started to listen to the lyrics, which I can't remember now, I thought it was quite a spiritual tune. And she's kind of singing about my silver lining, as if it's the aura or the light inside.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very good tune when you listen to the lyrics. So now we've found this tune again, I shall have another listen to it and pull the lyrics up online and have a look what it says.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So what's the theme tonight, Alan?
Right. It came to me in the week, and I texted to you the other day. Why do we get ill? Is there an actual reason for it? I'm not talking about catching a virus or something like that. What's behind the fact that we get ill? Is it always to do with a spiritual reason? How do you look at that one, Dave?
Well, I might turn that one right round the other way. Okay, yeah, go on. and say that it's always a spiritual reason why we get ill, or nearly always. We could look at things like illness caused through accident, for example, but is there any such thing as an accident? Well, how would you answer that one?
Well, you see, you can argue the fact that perhaps everything that happens to us in life is being preordained, in the sense we're meant to go through. And that could even be something like being involved in a road traffic accident. If you look at some instances of some people, I think it was on the TV over here, I think it was last week or the week before, somebody, I think it was while I was away last week up in Yorkshire, that a car had gone over the cliff, and the passenger, the car went down 20 foot down this cliff. And the person got out of the car, and the only thing that was wrong with her was that she got a broken wrist. Now and they were saying that it was beyond comprehension how she actually survived, because people would die. But so you could argue perhaps the experience was meant to be there, but it wasn't her time. I don't know. Because when things happen like that, and I say it's a freak thing, how does that work?
Yeah. Well, I often look at it's interesting to talk to people in that kind of situation and allow the guidance to come through and probe their whole life, because you usually find that things like your car going over the cliff is a bit of a wake up call.
I think it must be.
And it's the same with cancer. Many years ago, the guides came through one day when I was working with somebody, and they said, cancer is a blessing. Just those 3 words. Now, as human beings, the fear we have of cancer at a very core level is quite astonishing when you start to feel it. And so we would automatically say, well, how can cancer be a blessing? But when you look at this from a higher perspective and you're working with guidance and guides, what the guides show you is that God is frequently talking to you or trying to talk to you, trying to communicate with you through the heart. And people's hearts are so switched off or so blocked that they don't hear the message. And the message might be coming in many different ways. And so what the guidance was showing was that on one level you might get a bit of this, or you might get a bit of that, or you might have some slight accidents and you're still not hearing the message. And when time is running out for hearing the message, because it's almost like you're on a spiritual timeline and you've got to start waking up and doing certain things at certain times, then what God does is give you a real message, a real wake-up call. And what cancer frequently does is totally change your life. I remember seeing a fantastic video. It was a kind of documentary about surfing. It's actually the most spiritual film I've ever seen, and it's called Riding Giants. If people have never seen that, try and get hold of a copy of Riding Giants. It's a stunning documentary, and there's a cancer specialist doctor who's a surfer in that, and he's talking about surfing. You know, it's like every day when you're out on those killer waves, it's a life-changing experience. And he was likening it to cancer. He says it's such a wake-up call when you're on that wave and people experience similar things with cancer. They suddenly have that wake-up call and they come to life. It's like they might have been drifting along for a period of time, and then suddenly they come to life and ask the question, what's my life all about? And I'm not ready to go yet. You know, and I remember my mum going through that when she had a leg off 2 or 3 years ago. And I went into the hospital, and she'd had some leg trouble on and off for a few years after a car crash many years before. And I went in this one night. She'd had the leg off, and there were 4 angels stood at the corner of the bed. One I could see clearly, and the other 3 were kind of misty shapes. And I walked in and I thought, oh my God, I thought they're either here to protect her and carry her through this, or they're here to carry her off. And I wasn't sure which one it was. But It was a very, very powerful experience to walk into the hospital that night and see these 4 angels at the corner of the bed. So, coming back to that question, I think the vast majority, I say the vast majority, I think all illness it's either preordained for some reason or other as a teaching experience, or in the case of more serious illnesses, then, it's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Yeah, I do see that we are meant to go through different things in our life, and I've always said there's no such thing as coincidence. And if you actually think about the word accident, there's not really ever an accident. Accident in the sense of that it wasn't meant to happen, I suppose.
Yeah.
But was it meant to happen? You see, so does the word accident really? When you get cars collide, then it's down to either one or two drivers, either driving recklessly or misjudgment that causes it. Now, is that an accident? It could be that those two people were always meant to collide for whatever reason.
Karmic coming together.
yeah. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Dave. You can be on a road, probably, shall we say a motorway, and you're in a traffic jam, and you're sitting there. And then suddenly, after, 15, 20 minutes, you start moving, and you can't see what on earth the hell it was, what it was all about. Nothing.
Yeah.
And they actually did a study over here about, 10, 12, 15 years ago, whenever it was.
Yeah.
And using police helicopters to find where the hold-ups were happening on the M1 going towards London. Yeah. And they chose a day when I think there was something like about a 7-mile tailback, and they went to the front of the queue and they couldn't find what was holding everybody up.
Yeah. Well, I think I saw that study. Yeah.
It's a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, one of the conclusions they came to was that if one person suddenly brakes, everyone behind them suddenly brakes, and it's like a domino effect that ends up like 100 cars back. They're almost standing still, and then everything else is standing still behind them. So one car might brake and then accelerate again, but he's then caused, he or she, has then caused the start of the tailback. So I did see that in, I don't know whether it was the same study, but it was in a study. Yeah.
Just a slightly different thing. I'm just thinking about the M1. Going back, crikey, this has got to be going back a good 8 or 9 years ago. Anne and I were travelling down to go and do a clearing, and we was close to the services. I forget the name of it, the one close to London, and the traffic was heavy. We was in the centre lane, and there was cars either side of me and a queue behind, and from the services. This car came out driving on the hard shoulder, followed by 2 police cars with their lights flashing. Must have been, I don't know how fast doing, 80, 90 miles an hour, whatever. And then suddenly another 3 police cars come, and 3 of them came in front of me and the other 2 cars either side and started to slow us down. And then the other 2 police cars manoeuvred the ones who were trying to escape to the centre reservation. And stopped, got the people out of the car, put them into the police car. A policeman got into the car that had been stopped. They all drove off. And we never actually stopped. We was crawling along at about 10 miles an hour, and then they all disappeared off the next exit at Luton. And I'll tell you something. It was like being in some kind of film, It was, and the almost like the magic of the way that the police actually perform this manoeuvre. And it was quite awe-inspiring. So you never know. It makes you wonder how far back that incident caused the traffic jams going back. And we had prime seats right at the very front, watching all this going on.
Front row seat,
yeah. So were those 2 people in that car? Were they? Meant to experience that. Found out on TV later on that night, because we stayed down there, that they'd held up the NatWest Bank in.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if it was St Albans or somewhere, and they were,
Yeah,
somehow or another they managed to get themselves onto the M1, and they was
yeah,
chased through the services and out the other end, and
yeah.
so
Well, you've got to go to amazing lengths these days to get your own money out of a bank, haven't you?
you have, haven't you?
Yeah, they don't like letting it go, do they?
They don't.
You know,
Oh,
we're supposed to be talking about one topic, but we're getting onto another one here, so why not?
yeah. Well,
The
you see,
question I want to know is this about banks, yeah?
yeah,
We can all use PayPal today. We can send money anywhere in the world and it's instant, yeah?
yes, yeah.
Why can't banks do this? Why does it take banks a week and they charge you 25 quid or $35 or
Yeah.
30 euros?
Well,
What's the game?
you've named the game. The game's to get the money out of us, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the game. But you see,
They need holding up, don't they?
but, but if you actually think about it, it's as if we're changing the subject. But in a sense, everything that we talked about can lead to an illness. Now, those people who were those bank robbers, now, in a sense, you could say they created their own problems, which could turn into an illness at some time in their life through their wrongdoing, perhaps their anger, the way they feel about life. And these people who run these banks and take money off people who can't afford to have, I can never understand why, if somebody bounces a check and it's genuine, it's because they've miscalculated. They get lumbered with a 25 or 30 pound fee off the bank, and they're the very actual people who can't afford because their checks bounce.
That's right, yeah.
Now the people at the top are taking advantage of this and making a lot of money. Now,
out of other people's misfortune.
Yes. Now, could it be that their greed, in a sense, then creates a kind of illness inside them, and perhaps it might be cancer? That comes. So you say we're changing the subject, but in a strange way, it's all linked, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah. And I do think about these things sometimes because we see ordinary folks in the world, in everyday life, and they suddenly develop a difficult illness, shall we say. And you think, oh, well, that person's done a lot of good, and they've done this, and they've done that, and they've lived a fairly clean life, etc., etc. But you don't know what's going on in that particular person's emotions, and how the emotions can cause illness by the weight or pressure of emotion within a person. And emotion does cause more illness than probably many other things. If you think about people, for instance, who are water signs or even double water signs, they are so sensitive, and some, I'm sure, who may be listening now will have said to themselves, I'm too sensitive to be in this world, because the slightest thing, the slightest upset hits them at such a deep level that it can take days for that energy to release from the body. And the body is having to work hard all the time in trying to get that negative energy out of the system. So if we think about, just the emotional state of people, and we know that if we suddenly arrive in this situation where we've been diagnosed with something, fairly grim or fairly serious, and I've had that myself over the last couple of years a few times.
Yeah.
And the first thing that hits you is your emotions. You totally lose your clarity because you go into the emotions, usually of fear, and how do I get out of this now? What do I do? What's the next step? And it's interesting. We were talking just before the show about one or two things, and I think the listeners would be very interested in hearing the story of that chap who came to see you for healing this week, and how far he'd come.
He'd come from Mauritius.
Which is in the Indian Ocean, I think, somewhere, isn't it? Yeah.
and he saw myself and my website on there, along with some others, and looked at it, and he was guided to come to me. So he came to me yesterday. His parents live over here in London, although he lives in Mauritius. He just come from there, and with his wife and family, and he made the trip over here and made an appointment with me. And I picked him up from the railway station yesterday, and he came and had a healing. And I just had a text off him just literally 10 minutes before we come on air, saying, he was really pleased with the healing, and he'd been that tired all day that he's basically been, from what I can understand, been sleeping most of the day from the healing. But I mean, that's some trip to come and have healing off somebody, isn't it? From Mauritius.
It is.
I thought originally when he said he'd come from London, I thought, well, okay, it's coming from London, 130 odd miles to see me, but I didn't at the time. I didn't know about the other. How many is it?
It's a few thousand miles. Yeah,
it is. It's oh well.
Yeah, might be about 3,000. I'm not sure, but to guess, I'd say it was around 3,000, maybe a bit more. Yeah. So it's amazing, isn't it, that he just had a diagnosis, and the first thing he does is go to the internet to find a healer. Yeah. Yeah. And what we do is, the first thing we usually do is go to the doctor in our Western culture. People like you and me probably go to see a healer first. Yes. I know I usually do. In fact, I went to see one of the healers that we know well, and I walked through the door, and you know what he's like. Even before you got through the door, he's told you what the problem is.
That's right.
He says, "This is your problem. Go and see a doctor. Now get on the table."
Yes.
I got on the table, and he fixed something else that I hadn't gone there for, and it was just a fantastic job. It eased my life no end, and he was working on the heart at the same time. And I knew he was doing some good. And he's a funny lad sometimes, and he put both his hands on my chest, and you know what he's like. He only takes 2 minutes, and he's got his knife straight into you. 2 minutes later, he's finished, and he put his hands on me, both his hands on my chest and on my stomach, and he said, "Do you know what? I'm dead happy with that." And he said it in a way that I absolutely knew something good had happened. And it was fantastic, So I went with one thing. I did actually have another thing that I didn't mention that was causing me a lot of discomfort, and he just fixed that, and it was fantastic, kind of life-changing stuff.
Yeah, he's he's quite a remarkable person. The connection that he's got. Yeah, I remember when I went with. We went a few times. We went took Anne down there, and he did what he'd done, and she got this other minor thing that really she hadn't meant she was going to say to him, but you're kind of in some kind of trance, and as she was leaving, she turned around to him and says, "Oh, I was wondering about," and she kind of pointed to where the problem was, and he just said, "It's done."
Yeah.
And yes, there's. You see, sometimes I suppose illnesses are about finding out about ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. It's a process. It's a learning experience that we go through.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a massive learning experience. Yeah.
Because some people that can be diagnosed with terminal illness, and then they recover from it.
Yeah.
And the doctors and that will look at it and they'll go, "Well, that can't be. How can that be?" Perhaps the lesson's been learnt by the person, and God, in His wisdom, goes, "Well, okay, I'll perform this miracle because you've learnt the lesson, and you've still got a lot more to learn in this life."
Yeah,
I don't. I'm not speaking for God. This is just my thinking. It could be
That's
that.
right. Yeah. Well, from my own perspective, and my own experience, you can only speak from your own experience, and that's what creates your perspective.
Yeah.
And from my own experience, it seems to me that very rarely does God work directly one-to-one with the people on earth, but he works through one person to another. So there's that old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah.
And when you consult or you speak with somebody about a problem, that gives the universe an opportunity to deliver some answers to you, either through healing, as God working through you with this chat we've just spoken about, or in guidance. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dave, but I'm being told it's time that we took a break. So,
very good.
So
it is.
He says, Dave says, ding or a direct lightning strike, put you out of your misery. Okay, play your adverts, play your songs, and we'll talk again in a few minutes.
We will.
Hello and welcome back to Emerald Art Radio. Before we carry on, I think, Dave, you ought to tell everybody how they can get hold of Emerald Art.
Yeah, Emerald Heart, our blog website is emeraldheartlight.com. And how can they find you, Alan?
By going to calmingthoughts.com. And also, because this is something we're both involved with, Dave, this Sunday, 1st of June, is the launch date of the first edition of Paranormal Galaxy magazine, online digital. And I believe the first month is free. So if you go to www.paranormalgalaxy.com, and there will be a link there to the new magazine where you can read different articles. There's be one there from me, from you, Dave Ashworth. There's quite a lot of people who I know. There's Jessie Bravo, Sue Thompson, who had her own radio program on Paramania Radio with her poetry. So there's Andy Porter, who's a regular guest of mine on My Understanding Spirit show. So it's going to be a really, really good magazine. So check it out.
Yeah, that sounds great. Paranormalgalaxy.com.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah. This Sunday.
We're looking forward to seeing how that unfolds, aren't we, Alan?
Yeah. I'm not sure what time. See, Sherry's in Eastern time, so she's launching it on Sunday, so I don't know what time that's going to be. But if you're over here in the UK, I would imagine if you go on there from lunchtime onwards, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah. So
what's our theme again?
Right. Yeah. What I know what I was going to ask. Okay. Why do we get ill? Yeah. The connection with the Emerald Heart, with the guides that are, shall we say, within the Emerald Heart.
Yeah.
What is their view on illness?
Well, whenever I'm speaking, it's really the guides that are speaking through me. So everything we've heard so far is their view. However, the Emerald Heart light is a little bit different from most healing lights. And the Emerald Heart came into this world as an evolutionary light, particularly to open the hearts of humanity and progress the evolution of humanity. So what the light particularly does is it doesn't focus itself so much on healing, but it focuses itself on the evolution of human consciousness. And basically that means opening the heart to the deeper and deeper levels that remain tightly closed. Having said that, we have launched a healing process recently called the Divine Plan. And this does use the Emerald Heart Light, but it uses it in a slightly different way. If I was pushed to describe it, I would say it's a gentler way. It's not easy to describe the Emerald Heart Light because it works in many, many different ways, but it tends to be a very, very powerful light to get in very deeply into the consciousness of the heart and begin to reveal the truth of the individual's life. So what the guides have been saying so far on the show is to answer this question, why do we get ill? For the most part, it's a learning experience, or there's something out of balance in our life which we need to fix and get back in balance, which again is a learning experience. And as you said before, Alan, there's no such thing as coincidence. So when things happen, what we need to do is stop and look at that situation and see exactly what it is. I'll give you an example. We were speaking about this earlier on, and it's the guides have just brought it up again as an example. And yesterday, I'm over in Amsterdam at the moment, and yesterday I saw a wonderful man who'd spent some time with Osho in Pune in India. Osho was a mystic and great spiritual teacher. And he was a follower of the teachings and a practicing sannyasin, as they're known, Osho's followers. And it was an amazing session. And afterwards, he said to me, what a wonderful experience to be able to work with someone who can become as empty and deep as you can go. And I said, yeah, what happens in my situation, because I've, been working with light for so long, is I can just become empty of everything. And the body consciousness will just surrender into the hands of whoever it is that I'm working with. So the breathing process goes into its own process, if you like, and it begins to form a rhythm with the person who's working on me. Anyway, this morning I had this really sharp pain in the shoulder, and I've had this once or twice in my career, and it's just like having a red hot knife stuck into the joint of your shoulder. And whenever I get that, the first time I got it, I'll tell you about the first time I got it. The first time I got it was many, many years ago. And this pain started building up in the shoulder, and after a while I went to the doctor, see could he tell me what it was. And he said, well, I think we should have the shoulder taken out of the socket, and we'll have a look in the socket and see if we've got any growths in there. I thought, well, I don't think we will. Well, I went to see healer after healer, practitioner after practitioner. I went to see everybody I could think of. Nobody could move this. And by this time, the pain had gone right down my arm into my elbow, right down into the wrist. My right arm was virtually paralyzed by this time. The pain was so intense that I would wake up screaming with it. I'd never known pain like it. The left shoulder had started then, and then the pain was down to the elbow in the left arm, and the left arm was more than half paralyzed. I virtually couldn't drive except with my fingertips. I couldn't use a knife and fork. I couldn't open doors with door handles. I just couldn't move these arms from the shoulders. This was serious stuff.
Yeah.
And I tried absolutely everything and couldn't find the answer. Nobody else could find it. I couldn't find the answer. And then I was doing some healing. This had gone on for 6 months. By this time, it was 6 months I've been in this absolutely crippling pain. And I was doing a healing one day. And when I was doing a healing, I used to watch everything in the chakras, and I would move energies around in the chakras of the person. I could see what the higher self of the person was trying to do, and I would assist a little bit. I'd use the vibration of essences and get in there, introducing energies, and just watching everything in minute detail. And this one day, I sat down next to the client, and I thought, I'm just not going to look into this client. I'm just going to, start the process and sit there and do nothing. And by the end of that afternoon, this was, I think, 2:00. By the end of that afternoon, about 95% of that pain had gone. And over the next 2 to 3 months, the rest went. So the pain was directly introduced by God to say, Dave, you need to change the way you're working. Simple as that. All I had to do was let go and trust the universe rather than do the work. So when this pain appeared this morning,
All right, okay.
I know it comes up once or twice, and whenever it comes up, I stop my life. I look at every aspect and I say to myself, what do I need to change? What do I need to give up? What do I need to surrender? And so I've just started that process this evening, writing all the things down that are currently in my life and just dowsing which ones I need to look at, just tune in, double check it with the dowsing. And so tomorrow I'll start that process of beginning to, change things.
It's strange you saying about that's happening with your shoulder and elbow, what have you, because I've been down in Northamptonshire today healing, and the person who was having the healing got a terrible pain in the shoulder, left shoulder, all the way down the arm to the elbow, and it just brought it all back about. And I can see from this person it's probably about letting go as well, because this isn't the first time that I've been to the person's home to with the same problem, basically, going back a couple of years ago. So that obviously there's a lesson to be learned there somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, the doctors wanted to take my arm out of the socket to find out what was going on. So the arm out of my shoulder socket, that is. But the reality was, all I had to do was change something in the way I worked. And you can transmute that into, I had to change my life. Yes. And I think that's the case with an awful lot of illness. How many people are in jobs which are a total drudge, that they don't love, that, they don't really want to do, but they've got themselves into a trapped situation where they've got to pay the mortgage, they've got to do this, they've got to do that, and they can't let go of their job. In fact, I bought a card which has just jumped up off the desk at me to describe exactly that position. And I bought the card because it reminded me of a teaching I once wrote, and I thought, I'm going to dig that teaching out and have a look at it again and just share it around a bit. But this card reminded me of it. And this is to all those people who are in those situations where they feel totally trapped in jobs they hate. And what they don't realize is that is not part of their divine plan. But because of various fears and one or two other things, they can't get themselves out of the situation. Now, this is what it says on the card. This is your life. Do what you love and do it often. If you don't like something, change it. If you don't like your job, quit. If you don't have enough time, stop watching TV. If you're looking for the love of your life, stop. They will be waiting for you when you start doing things you love. Stop overanalyzing. Life is simple. All emotions are beautiful. When you eat, appreciate every last bite. Open your mind, arms and heart to new things and people. We are united in our differences. Ask the next person you see what their passion is. and share your inspiring dream with them. Travel often. Getting lost will help you to find yourself. Some opportunities only come once. Seize them. Life is about the people you meet and the things you create with them. So go out and start creating. Life is short. Live your dream and share your passion.
It's so true, isn't it?
That's it. And how many of us live our dream and share our passion? How many of us are actual creators and in that process of creating? And that brings us back to what we were saying earlier about God can only work through people if they allow him to. The creative process is when you open your mind and your heart and you allow the God consciousness to come into you and create in this world. That consciousness cannot create in this world without people opening their hearts to allow that to happen.
Well, that's very true, actually. If you see, there are people who, shall we say, dream of achieving something, but they're too afraid to try and achieve that dream. Then there's other people who think that they can't do anything, so they have to follow somebody else. And then there's the people the ones that go, well, I'm going to do this, do it with all my passion and intent. And if it doesn't work out the way that I think it should, well, at least I've done it. At least I've and whatever's meant to happen will happen. And I think the biggest problem is that to a certain extent, our society kind of puts everybody into different categories, and depending on how you've been brought up, it's so easy to follow almost like what society is saying. Well, this is how you're supposed to live your life.
Right, this is your box. Don't dare to come out of it.
That's right. Yeah,
that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Stay in your box. Those barriers are broken down quite a bit since the 60s, really. That was the start of the revolution of consciousness, if you like. And so it's quite good to see ordinary folks now on TV, doing things with people from a different class, where those two wouldn't have mixed, some years ago.
Well, you've only got to take. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. You've only got to take Paramania Radio, for instance. It was a dream of Dave's and Jenny's to have their own radio station, and through different events that happened when Dave was with another radio station, which I was with as well, kind of got it so it had to happen, and it was, and certain events, in a sense, pushed Dave and Jenny to do something about their dream, and here we are talking on Paramania Radio. So it and that in itself is a great achievement.
It is, and that's what happens when you follow your passion, because where does the passion come from? The passion is put into the heart by the Creator. This is why we're all different. This is an amazingly diverse world, and thinking about our subject tonight, why do we get ill? That's the first thing you need to look at is what's your passion, and are you actually living it? And I have many passions, and I kind of try and get in. I've got too many in reality, but they all bring something different to me. And I can dip my toe into this one, and it brings me, joy. That's what your passion's for. It's to bring you joy. And what does joy, the emotion of joy is like sunshine. What happens with joy is it bursts in the heart and it fills you with sunlight. Now, people who are in a very difficult situation with difficult illnesses find it very difficult to find joy. And I remember watching a little clip of something many years ago. It was a woman who'd cured herself of cancer. And she said to herself, it might sound daft, she said, I'm just going to watch movies that make me laugh. And she just got lots and lots of comedy stuff and laughed herself well. So, it's different situations for different people at different times in their lives. But if you've got a difficult situation where you're looking at difficult illness, if you go to bed at night and you ask for some guidance and you're open to receive it, then it usually comes.
Yes. Yeah. That it's so really illness is a byproduct of our own consciousness, really.
Yeah. It's really a byproduct of not following the path that we chose to come and follow usually.
Now, what about the people who are born with an illness? A baby that's born with cystic fibrosis or has got heart problems or whatever. Do you see that as a problem just with nature? Or is it something that was preordained?
Preordained.
Preordained.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. Yeah. How do you see that one?
Well, all these situations are different, and you have to look at each situation in isolation. But many of these can be both karmic on one level. So if you imagine there you are with God sitting in the cafe before you come down, and God's reading the charge sheet out to you and says, okay, well, we've got a bit of atonement to do for this and that and the other. And, so there's a little bit of negative karma here. What do you want to do? Do you want to spread it out over 2 or 3 lives? Or do you want to get rid of this stuff so you're really moving on? And so the soul says, well, it might be a good idea just to get rid of all this so I can move on. So, God says, okay, well, here's a choice of different things. Do you want to come down with an arm missing? Yeah. Do you want to come down with this? Do you want to come down with that? And we'll get this wiped out as fast as we can. So, there's no escaping the karma. And another way of looking at it is your conscience. Your conscience is also telling you how much karma you're building up as you're going through life. But also the situation might be slightly more complex than that, where the parents of the child are actually being given this child as a gift for a learning experience. So they can actually learn something. And quite often the learning experience is finding love in their heart.
Something, Dave, believe it or not, we're virtually out of time again.
Yeah.
It's gone so quickly. This hour always does every week. I've noticed that. 1 minute, so I think we better round up and say our goodbyes. So I'm Alan Cox. You can find me at calmingthoughts.com, and it's emeraldheartlight.com. Thank you, Dave. And so it's good night from me, and it's good night from him. So good night.